What is up, guys? Wraec is here with a new video, and today we want to look into the Destiny transition of Doppelganger Natalia DGN. Yes, quite the cool hero, I have to say. One of my favorite heroes, probably in the game right now. I mean, it's not for no reason that I have an S tier of her, that I got an S tier of her. The skin's still a bit weird. I'm kind of still a bit shocked whenever I click on it and I see this low resolution DGN looking at me. The rest is pretty cool. I mean, it's just about this first frame that is a little bit weird. But yeah, that's not the topic of this video. Let's look into the Destiny transition. We're still looking at the skill descriptions. Still, sadly, kind of hard to switch stuff around for this. I have 50 soul symbols at the moment, and well, you know, once you start using them, they are swiftly gone, and you don't get them back quite that easily. Especially, I think we currently have an Imps Adventure week. There are no soul symbols in there, so that's another problem. DGN, yeah, her main topic is really debuffs. She has some burst capabilities, but really it's all about the debuffs, and she stays true to herself on the Destiny transition. Let's take a look at the skill. The transition skill you unlock when you first unlock Destiny transition on her is at the end of each round consumes 3 layers of transition power with a 100% chance to inflict one of the following effects on all enemies for 2 rounds. And it's either reduces attack by 30%, reduces speed by 50%, reduces armor by 80%. Not bad at all in my opinion. It's a little bit similar to her core if we take a little look at that. When the battle starts on round end, there's a 100% chance to inflict one random effect on all from the followings on all enemies. And then highest speed, and we have here reduced control immunity by 10%, reduces speed by 30 and energy by 20. So you kind of have a synergy when you use a core there, in that you inflict way more debuffs, of course. But now that we look at those debuffs, first of all, it's at the end of each round, so not that much of a tough requirement to trigger that skill. Consumes 3 layers of transition power. 3 layers isn't too much, it's not really a lot. It's easily achievable if you do a basic every single turn, or if you do an active skill, you will actually have enough for 2 turns to activate this skill. So you will see this trigger fairly often. At the same time, we're not looking at a skill here that we will see trigger multiple times around. So, well, that's a thing. And when we take a little peek at the Destiny rank 6 here, we once again see if self has 3 or more layers. So we remove the requirement. They remove the consumption of those 3 layers at Destiny rank 6, and that is by far not that impactful here, of course, because it's just triggering at the end of each round, and not like Mockman, for example, where we see the effect trigger multiple times around potentially at Destiny rank 6. The debuffs itself, we see attack reduction by 30% is quite good, especially if we consider that we can multiply this, of course, with DGN. Keep in mind, on all enemies for 2 rounds, could I say, we have to test it, that this also applies for the same round. So like, as it triggers at the end of each round, you basically lose 1 round instantly, and then you have it for the next round. So it's not like you get multiple stacks on this at the same time, really whenever any hero attacks, unless of course you multiply it with DGN. We have the usual skills here. Again, active skill, basic skill are both perfectly viable. This one, not so much. It's the same for every single hero. For the Destiny rank 2, we're looking at this wonderful damage option here. This extra 600% of attack damage to one enemy with the lowest HP for every 1 debuff owned by the target. A little bit similar to her active skill and basic skill, I believe. Pretty good damage option. Then we have more of a support option here. Extra 50% chance to reduce frontline enemies' energy by 30, with the 50% chance to reduce their energy by 20 again. Quite a potent option, I would say, in that you can reduce a lot of the energy on the enemy heroes. With that, also, if you combine it with the core, which has a further energy reduction in there, you're looking at quite the good damage reduction. Not that much synergy with, for example, TBB, which is a meta hero at the current time, because she already reduces all the energy. But if you think about it, and you are maybe in a boss situation or in like a PvP situation, and you reduce the enemy's energy by 50 and he has somebody important in the frontal, like let's say DTV, that will certainly inflict some harm in that you will see less damage on the next round. So pretty good in my opinion, and quite the option you should consider. Last one deals extra damage, caps at 1500% of Doppelganger Natalia's attack to frontline enemies equal to 20% of their max HP. Bit of a weird way to say that, but I think this is strictly worse than the first one, because we have no cap. We just deal 600% of attack damage. One enemy with the lowest HP for every one debuff owned by target. So we have a multi-hit on the lowest HP with the potential to kill there. It's quite good in my opinion. This one, well, it can be more damage, but it just doesn't have the same utility. Just hitting the frontal for a single time for 1500% of attack is just not the same. I think this is quite potent. This has the potential to kill a lowest life enemy that just survived maybe with a layer of Unbending Will or something. So I would definitely either take that or that, depending on the situation. Then we're looking at Destiny rank 3. We have additionally grants 10% control immunity offset to one ally with the highest attack till the battle ends. This effect cannot be stacked. It's not that much, honestly. And a bit weird, if I can say so. Like, if you consider that this effect is mostly going to trigger every single round, and it's quite easy to have it trigger every single round, then we have an effect here that just does not stack. It's not that potent, as I say. It's 10% control immunity offset. It's not bad. It's not a whole lot. It's less than any of our star spawns granters. So, depending on who you have there, maybe you're running a big TBB, then this might be nice. But other than that, this I think just don't think it's the best option. Additionally, reduce the energy of one enemy with the highest attack by 30. Quite nice if you want to go for like the whole energy reduce options here. This can be a potent way to reduce the enemy's damage if he runs. Like the last example, the big TTVs will often be the highest attack enemy, and reducing the energy of that will leave him with just basic attacks, which is quite a nice way to reduce the enemy's damage. And then we have additionally removes one random buff from one enemy with the highest attack, which I find quite interesting, because obviously in PvP, I'm not sure this is very effective. It can be very effective if we have like one of the bigger buffs on the enemy, huge attack buff or something like that. Yeah, this can be quite interesting. It's a bit of a Forces vibe that we see here, but it's in PvP not that interesting. In PvE, where we see a more controlled situation, let's say for example Void Boss 1. Void Boss 1 in particular had a DR buff, a 50% DR buff, that was one of my main concerns really, because I thought, well, let's use Mystic Fairy Freya, let her go first before my LFA, so we have a chance of removing this buff. And obviously, well, you can use DGN to do that as well. Just make sure that there's one buff moved away, and in PvE often you have more ways to really consider which buffs there are, and you can take a little bit of a gamble to see if that specific buff that you are mostly targeting is removed. But here you have a chance to just remove one buff every single turn, especially in a boss situation. I think this is quite a nice option. Other than that, well, this one I think is the weakest of the bunch here. This one is quite good, and I think just because it is interesting, I would go for this one. Then we have, there's an extra 50% chance to remove one random attribute reduction effect from frontline allies. I would have loved a way to remove damage over time effects, just to fight Valkyrie stages more easily. But attribute reduction effects, as we saw here, there are quite a few strong ones now, so this is nice. 50% chance to increase all allies' energy by 20. I mean, we get it every single turn, so it's not very bad. It is quite a nice feat. You can add it to your team in a PvE situation when you really want to optimize your damage, or maybe even a PvP situation. Maybe you run her in kind of a CC team or something like that and you want to have some more energy. That can be good. And then we have something very interesting. There's an extra 50% chance to grant all allies one layer of transition power. I think this alone is not really that interesting for most teams. Like if I think about my LFA, for example, needs 12 transition power to even trigger a skill. We're not likely to see that happen very often within like a fight. If you go into a fight, for example, Flame Shrine or something, and you expect it to go for 15 rounds, okay, well, then you might get an extra transition skill out of this, which might be well worth it. But I think like in a PvP situation, I don't really see it by alone. I think there are other heroes that do it too. I think, was it on Star Alchemist Holmes Young that also adds transition power? I think if you have multiple heroes like that, and you really rack up those transition power numbers with skills like this, I think you can really see some big effects here. Alone, I would probably not use it, but as if you really go for it as a strategy, I can see it being very good. I think all of the options here are quite all right. In most situations, I would probably prefer the energy, unless I already know there will be an attribute reduction that I want to get rid of. Or I will just want to make really sure in PvP, for example, that I have as little debuffs as possible on, let's say, TPB or my Starwing Jara. Because one of the debuffs I'm certainly concerned about is like the speed reduction. Speed reduction, especially if you run a CC team, can quickly destroy a team by just making them so slow that the enemy damage dealer outspeed you, and being outsped by the enemy's damage dealers. Well, as a CC team, that is a death sentence, and that's something you definitely don't want. So, good options there. Basically, the last one, spell if attack increase 15% is decent. All allies crit damage 50%. That's actually kind of insane compared to the 50. Okay, this seems pretty strong actually. If you build around that, I can really see that be strong. Well, this is more like, okay, yeah. And then we have the obligatory 100 speed. I think this one, like just for increasing all allies crit damage by 50%, that's just insane. Like that's a huge buff to your entire team. So yeah, definitely the middle one. Last one. Okay, we have to look at it here. We have the same effect basically. That's the weird stuff here. We have, if self has 3 or more layers of transition power, there's 100% chance to inflict one of the following effects on all enemies for 2 rounds. And those are the same effects that we saw here. So 30% attack reduction, 50 speed reduction, or 80% armor reduction. So this effect is basically the same. The only difference is that we no longer consume those 3 layers of transition power, which doesn't have too much of an impact in my opinion. We just need to have them. At 12 layers, we see another effect now. Consumes 12 layers of them with 100% chance to inflict 3 debuffs on all enemies. 3 debuffs. Quite insane. Reduces attack by 50% for 3 rounds, crit by 50% for 3 rounds, and control immunity by 50% for 3 rounds. So we see the attack reduction alone with the 50% on just all enemies guaranteed. It's insane. We see it for 3 rounds this time, not for 2 rounds. Major difference, actually. Crit by 50% for 3 rounds, even if you were at 100%, just leaves you at 50%, which is a big difference. And then the control immunity reduction. My god, 50% control immunity reduction. Actually insane. I remember Void campaign where we saw enemies with like 90% control immunity reduction. You would think, well, that's insane. And while we already can see them now with insane heroes like TBB, Starwing Jara, a lot of CI offset from Star Spawns, maybe Receptor, or you just go for the mirror. This is like absolutely wrong. I mean, even if you don't have too much control immunity offset, if this debuff is on the enemy, you will be able to CC them. So it's quite nice. And then we have afterwards this extra 2000% of attack damage for every 1 debuff owned by enemies. And actually, I could think that this is quite the nuke. This is quite the nuke, because you already get 3 debuffs here. And this is even taking in consideration that she's pretty good by herself in applying debuffs. If we see like the Undying Shadow Bright Blessing, and whenever one of those enemies is hit, we counter attack, we reduce the attacker's crit, so we have crit reduction here, and then we can run, for example, an HHA for some precision reduction, and all of that stuff will play into this. And what you also have to keep in mind, we get more than 1 hero at the moment that has Destiny transition skills. If you just look in my back, we see Starwing Jara, we see ATD, Mystic Fairy Freya, LFA, SQH, and all of those guys have effects, and a lot of them also have attribute reduction effects. So we see more and more attribute reduction effects coming into the meta and into teams, even if you don't really change a lot about them. Just upgrading Destiny transition skills often leads to more attribute reductions in the game. And this will make DGN more aggressive, more of a damage dealer in that sense. And the big DGN, I could imagine, would do very well with this 12 layer transition skill here. And overall, I have to say we got quite a few support effects in here that I like. I wouldn't say it is much of a kit for her to be a damage dealer, though I think she will do decently well. And if you put maybe her as a homeowner, I mean, she won't be the hero you will likely want to use to clear Void Vortex, the new upcoming Void Vortex or something like that. But I could imagine her being in the team and just providing her buffs, providing her debuffs, making it all a bit easier for you. And in Void campaign or other demanding situations for a team where the enemies really put out damage, a 50% attack debuff and a 50% crit debuff can be life-saving. So in that sense, I think she has a really good kit. I'm looking forward to actually building her. At the moment, I'm focusing more on LFA. And if we take a look at her tenants, I should collect that. Alright, the hero, she's 10 and 4. She's 10 and 4. Mystic Fairy Freya, where I currently use her, and for DTV, and DTV obviously being like the big campaign clearer, the hero that most people use to clear campaign. There she is quite alright. And she's a good tenant, she's in a slot with ATD, so that's not necessarily a reason to build her for me, sadly. Because I have ATD set up at Destiny, at Divine Power 6 at the moment. But she's in the same slot. She's, I think, even a bit better. Yeah, I actually checked, just took a second and checked that. She's actually the second best tenant in the game if you upgrade her to the max, which means like max Destiny rank and everything. Then she's the second best tenant in the game, which is quite interesting because SDE is the best tenant in the game, DGN the second best tenant in the game. Both are tenants for DTV. Quite insane, I have to say. So, that being said, tell me what you think about DGN. Is she on your list of the heroes you want to upgrade? Do you also think her skin is weird? But with that, I wish you guys a great day. We'll see us in the next one.